Hey, today is Monday. It is the 4th of April. Yesterday, not really much more after I spoke to you. I did close out the inboard and outboard ribs of the horizontal stabilizer. Got those riveted, got the rear spar clecoed on. Had a minor heart attack when I went to go put this rear spar on. It's never been as a single piece attached to these skins, and when I dropped it in place, it looked like it was a ½ inch too short, which makes no sense at all. But it was just momentary until I realized that there's just a little bit of sag, because at that point the whole structure is being supported by the forward spar, and there was just a little bit of sag. So when I took this took this holder and walked it in a little bit, everything came together and it was fine. I just found out that I have to leave tomorrow morning for just a few days for work, so I'm not going to get as much accomplished on the vertical stabilizer as I maybe thought that I would this week. But I do want to talk a minute about riveting. This assembly is the first time that I've had to do a significant amount of bucking rivets. Other than just an odd one here and there on some of the things that I've done. And it's always been a little bit of a terrifying experience, because this machine just feels like it wants to run away and put big dents in my airplane. I did practice kits before this. I followed, to the best of my knowledge, the instructions regarding setting up the rivet gun, but I couldn't seem to get the right touch. I used back riveting for the stiffeners on the elevators, and that turned out well, but it still hits really hard. And I would have to, when I did that back riveting, those bursts would be like a ½ second, and that would set the rivet. And I thought, man, how am I going to build a whole plane with 15,000 rivets if I have to have a touch that precise, especially if I'm reaching long distances with a bucking bar and a rivet gun on the other side. So before I got into riveting this, I committed to doing a lot more research on understanding my rivet gun and how to get it set up properly. I did notice on another builder's, a guy who's building an RV-7, he made a remark at one point that he sets his compressor at 30 to 35 PSI for 3/30 seconds, the smaller rivets, and then maybe 35 to 45 PSI for number 4 or 1/8 inch rivets, 4/30 seconds rivets. So I tried that, going over to the tank and turning it down, and I thought, oh wow, this hits a lot lighter than before. This is actually manageable. Although I did notice that while you're setting a rivet, when you have the pressure set that low, the pressure starts to run out and the gun sort of dies on you. So I went on Van's Air Force and I did some more research, and there's sort of a debate on there about changing the pressure at the regulator on the compressor, or using the inline regulator. And that's the key to the thing. I have the inline flow regulator like I'm supposed to, and the instructions say that if you turn it one way, it hits harder. If you turn it one way, it turns lighter. Here's the deal, for me anyways. It may be really difficult to read, but this thing actually has numbers. It has a graded scale from 1 to 6. So I would think that 1 is either high or low, 6 is the opposite of that. And as I turn the dial around, I should be able to feel it testing on a block of wood, hitting lighter or softer, and ultimately determine which is the high or low end of the scale. But when I turn it from 1 to 6, I notice absolutely no difference at all. Noticed no difference in the way that it was hitting. So after all my research and people saying, don't do that, walking back and forth, it's not a good method, learn how to use your regulator, do something like this where you set one finger behind the trigger so that as you depress the trigger, you have a limited run so you can't completely crush it and reduce the possibility of it running away. But here's what I found out. If you look here, this plunger and the regulator, the numbers on the scale mean absolutely nothing. If you screw this one way, this plunger will come all the way out. If you screw it many turns, it will go all the way in, and then you can actually feel the difference. And all the way out is the lightest possible setting. So leaving the compressor set at 90 psi, it hits very light. In fact, so light that it's very difficult to even set a 3/32 rivet. You have to drive that thing for 10 seconds maybe to get it to drive. So I finally had a tool that I could work with comfortably, and this was not a problem at all. And as I got more comfortable with it, I progressively turned up the strength of the rivet gun to where it would set a 3/32 flush rivet in about a 3 count with a nice, easy, manageable pull where the gun wasn't running away and skipping across the skin, and I could control the bucking bar and hold it perpendicular on the inside. 1, 2, 3. It became very predictable with very repeatable results. So anyways, if you are new to building like me and have no experience operating a rivet gun like I did not, and you're working on your practice kits and you're like, man, my sign kit doesn't really look that good from up close. That's the key. Spend a lot of time figuring out how to properly set up your voltage or your flow regulator. You'll be much happier. I have a lot more confidence about how the rest of this build is going to go now because I feel like I unlocked the secret right there. So at any rate, I'm no longer intimidated by bucking rivets. I'm no longer intimidated by drilling out rivets. I've gotten much better at that, thanks to watching other builders demonstrate it and YouTube, like how we learn most things these days. Anyway, so that's enough rambling. I'm going to get this moved into the house because nothing's going to happen with this probably for a couple of months until the brackets, the attached brackets and the bearing comes in. So that will go in the guest bedroom with the other parts that are waiting for brackets to arrive, which means the only thing that I have left that I can actually do work on with the empennage kit is the vertical stabilizer, which is pretty simple. I would say the big gotcha with that is just making sure that you're very careful about not putting rivets in any holes that are going to happen much later. There's quite a bit of that on there because of the attachment ultimately to the fuselage and also for the tail wheel, blah, blah, blah. So I think that the best I can do today is get this out of here, get it cleaned up a little bit, start getting situated with those parts. I think, I'll have to look back, I think that I already final size drilled the skin and the ribs, so maybe today is just parts prep and priming, and that might be as much as I'm able to get done today, which I'd be quite happy with. So stay tuned.
So basically just beginning with mocking up of the skeleton and then skinning it, I need to make sure that all of those holes are final size drilled. Way back in the beginning, I did work on this when I hit a roadblock on the horizontal stabilizer, and I'm not sure why I didn't continue this, except maybe just thinking that I couldn't get very far without the back-ordered brackets. But when I take this apart, or you might have already noticed, like the ribs have already been primed. So I did mock this up once before. It makes a little cameo in my shop tour video, but there's no video of the actual day that I put that all together. Hence, this is vertical stabilizer video number 1, but it's, I think, only the second time I've actually touched the part. You can see that the rear spar still has the blue vinyl on it. But yeah, the ribs, I don't know if maybe I just decided when I was kind of experimenting with doing edge finishing and whatnot to go ahead and get those done. So edge finishing on the rear spar, the plans and the diagram out in front of me to make sure that I don't mess anything up on this. Guess what? I do. That rear spar has a really long, there it is on the left corner of the table, a really long reinforcement bar, and it's got a fairly significant bend in it. Just from tooling, you can see how it's kind of curved there. Do what you can to straighten it out. Just get those parts ready to prime. And then doing all the dimpling, I think that I decided to leave the rear spar unprimed because it was clean and didn't have any scratches, and there wasn't really any reason, I didn't think, to get rid of the all-clad to put primer on there. So getting ready for riveting here. It's always a little bit of a trick with these pieces to get them to fit cleanly and easily over the ribs when you first start buttoning it up. It is a pretty tight assembly, and so you take a little bit of time working at a strategy to try to get that skeleton in there and riveted without causing a problem. You see that I took the skeleton out here so that I could work on these rivets that attach the ribs to the forward spar. These are tricky because these flanges aren't 90 degrees. The rib flanges are not 90 degrees or perpendicular to the web of the spar, which means one of them is kind of open, but the other one is like an acute angle, and there's just not a lot of room to get in there with a rivet gun, a bucking bar, a squeezer. You can bend the rib away from the flange a little bit to gain some room there, but when you do, it lifts the flange off of the spar, and obviously those two parts need to be joined. So you need to just take your time and get as creative as you can using clamps to hold those assemblies tight and together while you get those rivets set. And yeah, it can be an aggravating process, but it can be done because there are thousands of these things flying around right now. Notice on the bottom of the horizontal stabilizer on the right-hand side, I have a bunch of little pieces of blue tape there. So I was careful to mark all of the rivet holes that should not be riveted, because those ultimately, like probably years from now, will be used for attaching the fiberglass fairing that sort of smooths out this transition from the tail or the empennage into the two stabilizer, vertical and horizontal stabilizer surfaces. So getting up in there, doing that riveting, feeling much better now that I have become friends with my rivet gun. This all went pretty well. I was really happy. I want to say that the reach into the deepest parts of this is a little bit longer than the reach getting into the widest parts of the horizontal stabilizer, and pretty close to my limit in terms of being able to comfortably reach it and feel like I have solid control of the rivet gun, and making sure that I'm keeping the bucking bar perpendicular to the material. So anyways, that pretty much wraps up this video here. Overall, a successful day. The mistake happens tomorrow. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you feel like it, and catch you later.